also going to be joined by the spokesperson for the American Academy of Pediatrics, Dr. Alana Levine. Janine, thank you for standing by. Abby, thank you as well. Tell me a little bit about your journey as it relates to vaccines.
All right. Well, I actually grew up unvaccinated. I said in my Facebook post, I said it was before it was cool to be unvaccinated. A little tongue-in-cheek there because my parents didn't vaccinate before the Wakefield studies even came out and were later debunked. And then 1998, I was already 10 years old and unvaccinated at that point. My parents did use the religious exemption for that to go to school. So when I changed my mind about this, which is a story in itself.
Your mother-in-law.
My mother-in-law, actually, is what triggered this new research.
Life-changing decision.
Exactly.
What happened with your mother-in-law?
So when she was in grade school, she contracted German measles, which is rubella, and she was sick for 6 weeks and almost died. And her 3 brothers came down with the regular measles at the same time. So her mom was like back-to-back kids measles, daughter dying of German measles. And my mother-in-law just laid this on me when I mentioned that I was thinking of not vaccinating my kids. And so that's when I thought, well, maybe I should look into this again. And that began my new research into the latest studies that have come out about vaccines. Because back when my parents were not vaccinating, it was just a theory, and there wasn't too much talk about it in the mainstream medical community, from what I can tell, until Wakefield brought forth his paper.
Now, for reference, Wakefield, and we brought in a lot, I knew his name would come up, is subject of several documentaries. Dr. Andrew Wakefield, tell the audience and remind us his role in this recent conversation on vaccines.
So Andrew Wakefield published a study, a very small study, on 8 patients, and he hypothesized that there was a link between the MMR, mumps, measles, rubella vaccine, and autism. Numerous, emphasis on the word numerous, subsequent studies found that he was just plain wrong. And in fact, he has now lost his license, and his journal article was pulled from the British Medical Journal where it was originally published.
He has been debunked.
He has been debunked, yes.
But people still use the Wakefield study. Janine, you're nodding. This is something you still believe.
He has been debunked, but he is still a giant voice in what's happening. Consensus is not science.
But does debunk mean wrong? Was he wrong?
No, he wasn't wrong.
But you just said he's been debunked.
Because that's what happened to him. Do I agree with the fact that he's been debunked? Absolutely not. He wasn't wrong.
So
he isn't wrong.
What he did was he placed fear in the minds of all these parents. And vaccines are a victim of their own success. Today's parent hasn't lived in a time like when my father was 13 and got polio, and my grandparents were afraid he was going to die, or your mother-in-law.
And we do know that numerous diseases have been either eradicated or put under control. Polio, measles, the list goes on and on. Janine told me, and I believe in being honest in this show, in the commercial break, she said I hurt her feelings because I asked her son to move over here. I didn't want him to leave the building. I asked it because I felt like we were talking over him. And I felt like he's already been labeled. I don't want to be a part of putting a scarlet letter on him. But you were, in full disclosure, offended, as you told me, because I said I have a 5-month-old. And as you had a right to not get him vaccinated, I have a right to be the parent that I am and say, I wouldn't want my child to hug an unvaccinated child. So with that said, doctor, how much of a danger can we point to science that unvaccinated children pose now?
So here's what we know. There are pockets across the country where there are unvaccinated children, and that's where the outbreaks spread. We need 90 to 95% of people to be vaccinated in order to protect everybody else, especially those that are too young to be vaccinated and those that are most vulnerable with medical problems. How old's your son?
He's 5 months.
He's 5 months. So he's too young to get the MMR, the mumps, measles, rubella vaccine right now. You wouldn't want him sitting next to somebody who potentially could have.
Where
And there
is
is-
the
But with
science
that
that
said,
shows
I
that?
don't
Where is
want-
the science that shows that? There is no science. There is no study that shows unvaccinated children pose a risk. There's not one. We have medical
it's in
doctors.
communities where there are unvaccinated people.
There's no science to that.
That's the reality.
Does
We
everyone
just
here
had
know-
an MMR. We just had a measles outbreak.
Okay, so why do vaccine manufacturers as of 1986 have zero liability? Do you know what that means? It means they can't be sued. If the product was so good and they stood behind it, why can't they be sued for damages? The vaccine court has paid $4.1 billion already to vaccinate
Janine,
your
do you
children.
believe that vaccines work in any role in our society?
Do I believe that they work in any role?
Or have a role in our society?
I can't speak. I don't believe in
So
it as
under
a
your
person.
view, we should all here
I think-
have not gotten a single vaccine.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm
What are
saying
you
that
saying?
vaccines do more harm than good. That there's an immune system.
So
that,
what vaccines are you okay with?
I'm not okay with any of them. But that's my personal belief. That's my belief. I'm not telling you guys what to
So
believe.
again,
but you're skipping over the
but
biggest fact about manufacturers having no liability.
No, I'm not
Would
saying,
you buy a
no,
car
let me-
if the driver, if they said, if the brakes go and you're maimed?
But I also wouldn't put my child in a position to be with another kid who was unvaccinated at 5 months. We can go back and forth on this.
Right.
Part of why I wanted this conversation is, and this is going to come as a surprise to you, I actually believe that a lot of doctors shut people like you down.
Right.
Don't say, let me hear
Right.
what you have to say. You're saying right when I say that. I also think people like you then shut down when I bring up science. So how do we talk about it? Because
Yes.
and that's
I agree
my
with you.
point with you.
Yes.
Is that, yes, you can throw out numbers, as I've told Scott Baio, I do this for a living. I can do the same to you. But when I ask you, if we all, 250 people in here should be unvaccinated, what is your answer?
Okay, so my opinion is my opinion is no, they shouldn't. But that's a separate conversation. You're getting away
Doctor,
from the government overreach that took away my rights as a parent to choose what goes into my child's body. Do you want to be able to choose what
We
goes
have a
into
right
your
to be
baby's?
healthy. We have a right to be healthy.
It's not a public health right. They're using that as a guise.
Is this?
is a public.
It's not
So-
a public
Because I don't
health
want.
right.
Because I don't
So
want
there
our
are
conversation to
two
be
things that I want to
stuff.
say in response to that. One is the decision to vaccinate is the parental decision. It's a unique decision because it doesn't just affect your own child. It does affect people around you, and that's why the measles, which we thought was eliminated from this country in 2000, is now back with
But
a
can
vengeance.
doctors do better or do more when it comes to, listen, if I was born in a certain religion and I was taught this my entire life, legitimately, not as a way to get around the system, or I'm watching the news and Big Pharma with the opioid addiction, and all of a sudden now they're telling us things that they never told us. I grew up Tuskegee experiment.
Right.
I grew up hearing about that. So can doctors do a better job at saying, listen, the science is not on the side of the anti-vax community, but I will hear you out patiently.
Absolutely. And that was the second point I was going to make, which is my goal as a pediatrician is to listen to the parents of my patients' questions and address each of their questions. I don't want any parent to feel strong-armed into vaccinating. I want parents to leave my office feeling proud to protect their children. I want them to come to that decision on their own because of the information that I can share.
You wanted to stand up? Come on, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Debbie.
Debbie.
Hi. I just have a quick question. How would you feel if your child contracted the measles?
Is that a question for me?
Yes,
Yes.
for me.
That's a great question. You want to know why? Because my son went to camp with a child who was recently vaccinated with a live virus. MMR is a live virus. And they shed on my son. And my son came home from camp and had the measles. He contracted it from a child who had the MMR vaccine. He was sick for 4 days. He had a rash. He had all the symptoms of measles. I did everything that I know to do as a mom, as my choice, and he was fine on the 5th day. He got measles from a child who had the measles shot.
But what if he wasn't fine, and what if he didn't get better? How would you feel after not giving him that shot?
Where's the proof that shows the shot eradicates the measles?
Well,
Where's
the child who had the shot, did he have the measles?
I have no idea because he came home from camp and I called the camp and they said
So
in his
it looks
bunk.
like his immune system, which was given a weakened virus, was able to respond
How do you know how
properly.
weakened the virus was? If it
Because
was
the experts
attenuated.
tell me, and I don't have to be an expert in this particular field of science
Right.
in order to trust the experts, and that's my big message here.
But he got the measles from someone who
can-
shed on him a live
Abby, you
virus.
just said something very important. The science community
Unanimously.
allowed society to evolve to where it is. You believe, as I do believe, 96% of the children in your sons in the state of New York are vaccinated. You are amongst the minority, but 96% are vaccinated.
Right.
And they are asking, why should a small number of children pose a greater risk to the majority? That is the question.
We don't pose a risk to the greater majority. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
This conversation will go on. This is exactly what kept me up. This is what kept me up last night and the night before, because there are people who will embrace what they want, but we are not going to stop, because that's what this show is about. The conversation will not end. Go on to social media. We are dedicated to hearing your voice. We will be right back with more to come.